Greetings, fellow makers. Welcome down to the shop. We are live from the shop today over on our Twitch channel, and we are going to build some foam props for a change. What are we making, Britt?
We are making melee weapons from Fallout 4. We have Adam Cat's cosplays, but we don't have weapons for them, so we decided to make some of those. And yeah, it's one of those things where we make big complicated stuff like axes and swords, but we also want to show people how to make simpler weapons.
Yes,
yeah.
These are it's a pipe wrench, right? Technically it's the pipe wrench from Fallout 4, but it's just a pipe wrench. And we're going to show you guys how to build that out of foam. Today we'll be doing the fabrication, and then I think next week we're going to do the paint on them. These are just references pulled right from the game. In fact, this one here, the main picture I'll be using, I just grabbed from the Wiki page. It's just a side view, and I scaled it appropriately in Photoshop, printed it out, and we'll be using this to cut out our foam pieces. Some of these other views we were able to grab that'll show the thickness and proportions on them. So that's what we'll be doing today. We're going to make some fun foam props. Follow along at home and have a good time.
Yeah.
Here is my wrench shape. Cut my shape out of the paper, and then I liberated the handle. I'm going to do this piece separately and then attach the next piece out. This I want to be 2 layers thick. This is some foam that we have here. I think it's 10 millimeters thick, and I'm going to put a wire in there for support. But first I need to rough cut a couple of pieces of foam so that I can glue them together with a wire in there, and then I'll cut out the shape of this whole thing. And then this piece is going in here, like that. And like I said, I want to put a wire down the middle of it, so I'm just using this silver Sharpie to trace out the outline of this. So there is that shape, and then I want to put a wire in there. So there's a piece of wire I cut out. The ends of it are a little pokey. So I'm going to just bend those over. Vice grips there to round that. That way the end won't poke out there. I'll do the same thing on this side.
I scaled my tire iron to the same size as Bill's wrench, and it seems small. You can tell by the grip size that this should be more like 1 inch thick. Looks pretty tiny, so I scaled it up and printed it out again. And this seems much more beastly. It might be a little big, but it's better to have a slightly oversized prop so that it looks all cool. So I'm going to cut this guy out and then figure out how I'm going to make it out of foam.
I trimmed out some material here to hold my wire. This is just to keep it rigid. So then I trimmed it out, and it was a little shallow, so I went back with a Dremel and just removed a bunch more material with a sanding bit. That'll fit right in there, and then I'm going to glue this together. But to make sure that I cut it out appropriately and don't cut into that, I'm going to rough trim this, the shape here, just a little bit so that I can kind of line it up. I'm not going to the line. I'm just roughing it out so that when I glue this thing closed, I'll know kind of where all the pieces are. And then I can trace the shape again, and I'll end up cutting this out, I think, with the bandsaw. So now, when I glue this together, I can trace this shape on there, and when I'm cutting it out with the bandsaw, I won't cut into my metal rod. So I'm just putting some barge down on this here, and I'll put some on the other side, and then we'll glue it together with the that wire in the middle, and it will be all set, and we can cut it out.
I have this blade. These strips wrap around the pipe, and it looks like there's a gap there. I don't need to leave that gap.
No.
I'm not partially attached to it. And then there's this pipe shape. So I'm trying to decide how many different pieces I want to make and assemble. I really like the idea of leaving this gap here, because that's kind of like an iconic look to it. I don't want to just fill this in. So maybe have this be solid and that be solid, and that would be how they attach together.
So you just got a heat gun and some gloves, and you're heating up that piece of, I think that's PEX tubing from the hardware store, and just slowly bending it to shape, and that'll support your handle.
That already seems super sturdy.
Yeah, and once you glue some foam around it, it'll be even sturdier.
Awesome. There we go. That looks great.
Our barge has set up, and I'm going to just glue this down, like so. And I'm just going to set it down and push... Oh crap. I'm going to do it this way. There we go. There we go. And I'm just going to press it down like that. Squish, squish, squish. And that is our handle, and it's nice and sturdy with the wire in there. Now I can take my handle shape, and I'm actually going to pin this down so it doesn't float around on me. And I'm going to trace it again, and I'll have a nice outline that I can take to the bandsaw to trim this guy. And we'll do this thing. And there's that. I can take this to the bandsaw and cut it out. So I'm going to go do that. That is why you should buy a bandsaw. Like, look at the teeth on that. Super duper nice. Here's the next part here, the next layer or level out on our handle. This is the template here. There's a letter or a number there. I just cut that out. I rough cut this with an X-Acto knife, but I'm going to go take this over to the Rotary Tool and clean this circle up a tiny bit. Then this will get glued down and it'll look good.
I got my 2 halves of the tire iron roughed out, and I'm going to sandwich this pipe in between them, so I need a trench. So I'm going to cut a trench in this side of the foam with a knife, cut like a V shape, and then go over to the Rotary Tool to finish out the depth. Make sure this is sunk all the way in so I can just set this one on top. Yeah, I think that'll work.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how it goes. I decided I am cutting a trench on the other side. The trench is a little big anyway, so it should sort of match up.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
The contact cement has dried, so I can lay this piece down here. I'll do the same thing on the other side. All of this will get cleaned up with a Dremel later. But there goes that. This is the head, and I cut this out again on the bandsaw. This interior piece I cut through it, and I'll just super glue that back together. Actually, I'll do that right now. So just a little bit of super glue on here. Oop. Just sort of mash that together like that, and then lay it down, maybe, and hold it together. This gets glued, will get glued together like that for our piece. So I'm going to cut out another piece like this for the other side, and then I can attach these parts. I can do the knob right there, and then there will be another part that covers this gap right there.
I got my super glue, and I'm going to glue the pipe into one of these trenches. I ended up doing a trench on either side because this pipe is so thick, and I didn't want to cut all the way through the foam. Alright, I'm just gonna put the super glue in the trench. And this is just to kind of keep it in place for when I glue the two sides of foam together, the pipe won't move around. I I could use hot glue, but I don't want the squeeze out to get in the way of sandwiching the two pieces together.
Here we go. This guy's ready to go, and a piece goes across it, bridging the two parts right here. So I've taped my template back together, and then I'm going to cut out just the parts that I need. So that part gets freed, like so. 6mm craft foam. So I'm going to cut out 2 of these and glue one on either side after I glue these pieces together. So that's what's happening next.
I've got my blade all traced out on this foam. I need it to be thicker, so I'm going to sandwich 2 pieces together. On this one, I'm leaving room so I can sandwich them, glue them together, and then cut them out on the bandsaw so the edges line up. This edge is the only one I need to make sure lines up when I glue them together, because I'm not going to be cutting this. It's already flush with the blade, so it's less work for me on the bandsaw. And then I'll just follow this line here. And I'm going to mark that these are the 2 sides I am gluing so that I don't accidentally put glue on the wrong side, because I've done that before.
Made some progress here. We put Barge Cement on these 2 parts to finally join them together. So I'm going to do that now. Here they go. And I decided there's a gap here, but I decided to glue those together just to make this sturdier. So those are going to get glued together as well. So there we go. There's our wrench, basic wrench shape. This is some 6mm craft foam, and I just cut these out with an X-Acto knife, and I'm going to barge them up and glue them down there, like so. So that's what's going to happen to those. Next, then the spinny part, it's not going to spin, I'm going to glue it in place, but the knurled handle part, or knob, is going to be cut out of this. This is some sandwiched EVA foam to get it to the right thickness there. And I just drew a circle on it, and I'm going to go cut that out on the bandsaw and then clean it up with a sander and glue it in place.
I've got some bolts I need to make on one side of the blade, and the other side has some nuts. I'm going to probably make them identical and just add some material on the nut side. I have this handy stencil that has some different kind of hex patterns that look like, yeah, the largest size looks like it's pretty close to the actual size of the bolt. So I'm going to trace those onto some scrap 1/4-inch foam and then cut all those out. I've got my 2 halves of the pipe all contact cemented up. The barge has dried on these guys, so now I'm going to try to tack them together as close as possible. If they're not perfect, it's alright, because I have to round them over. So I'll just start somewhere. I'll start at the bend and then kind of work to either side. Just kind of lightly tack it down, and then I'll smush it down all the way when they're lined up. That way, because if you smush it down and kind of squeegee it over, you might get a curve going on.
Yeah, it's not working. It's not working quite the way I thought it would.
Well, that was a nice try. There we go. Yeah, that's super sturdy. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Cha-cha-cha-cha. Cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Yeah. Now I have to round over all the edges, so there's that.
Here we go. These pieces are ready to get glued down, like so. Just did some barge on there. Just sticking those together. Trying to get the edges to be all nice and lined up, so I don't have to clean those up that much later. Although this will be nice and easy to clean up. That can go on there. Now, I did work on making the knob for this part here, and it went a little sideways. The knurling on it was a little tricky, but essentially that's going to go in like that. In there. But I kind of messed it up. So I'm going to go make this again.
The contact cement has dried on my 2 axe blade halves, so I'm going to tack them down. Kind of use my finger to guide the two blade edges together, because that's the side I want to match up. The rest of it can be trimmed down later. So slightly, there we go. And just kind of squish them down. Excellent. So I have my edge here that I don't need to trim on the bandsaw. I just have to cut in these little notches, but the rest of this I will cut out over there. Excellent. I'm making a tube on the top of this pipe, and it's supposed to be a little bigger. I'm going to use a PVC pipe to make sure this glues together correctly. I put some contact cement on here. And just kind of tack the inner bits together, and then with having the inner support really lets me get the seams to stick. Bill goes over this in his Foamsmith 2 book for making his axe handle. And I could just leave the pipe in there, but I'm trying to keep this as light as possible. And this is also going to kind of inset into this pipe, and then this end isn't going to support anything, so I don't need to keep the pipe in there. There we go. And that'll go in there when I trim off the sides. Dink.
So here's the first try. Got totally screwed up. This one is the second try. I've extended it a little bit so that it fits. It's a little longer. It'll pop out on either side. I already knurled one side. The other side, I'm going to do the same thing. And I've drawn, kind of hard to see, but there's little notches here to note where all these knurls are going to line up going across it. So, for example, this one here will line up there. And I can just score a nice line in there. It doesn't have to go too deep. There's a line there. And that line there can line up with that line there. And I score it. Like that. That one there. And I just go all the way around. So that's one direction. Now I need to go the other direction. Like so. And do the same thing. Now I want to make sure this knife is really sharp to do this. So I've got my sharpener hiding right there. So I've got all these lines cut in there, and I got to hit it with a heat gun, and those lines will open up. And there you go, there's our little knurled knob. And later, when this thing is all done, this will be one of the last pieces I glue in, but that will get glued in just like so. One of the last little pieces is this part that goes over the top jaw, and this was just cut out using my template here. It's cut out using a 2mm craft foam. So I've got this little part here, and it goes like so. And I'm just going to super glue that. I've got this accelerant for the super glue that I'll spray down on the area, and then I'll super glue all the little parts here, especially those little teeth, to make sure those get tacked down nicely. Making sure not to super glue anything to my hand, hopefully. And then I can just tack this down one tooth at a time until it's lined up perfectly. And there we go. Voila. Got most of the modeling done on this. There's a couple little things I might add, but for the most part, that's my wrench. I took the handle here and I just skimmed off about an 1/8 of an inch on the bandsaw, and I'm going to trim out a bit of this and glue it back on like that to make a little bit of a rim. That part I don't need, then this part can get glued down there. and I just use super glue for that. Make sure I've got enough on there, like so. I'll do that all the way around until I get the whole thing. Yeah.
I've started shaping the pipe to be more rounded, kind of started taking down the edges. It's a little bit rough still, so I want to refine it a bit, but this will get glued to this guy. And this is a little chunk of foam that I used a pipe. This is the one I used earlier to kind of form a pipe shape. And I made a kind of mangled lug nut attachment there and just sunk in a piece of foam to give it that kind of depth. It's mostly going to get hidden, so it's not that clean, but it's fine. I made some extra little foam bits on the end of this so that this will socket on a bit better. If there's a little bit of a gap there, I can always fill it later. But it'll be something like that. And then this part gets covered with, in the game, it's just attached with these like metal strips. So I'm just using 3mm foam. After this gets glued down, I will glue these guys down and wrap it around like that. And these little bolts I made earlier will get glued like that. But before I assemble all of this, I want to smooth this guy out a little bit more and also taper the blade on this.
Just about all the fabrication is done on this guy. We added a couple more little parts here out of foam. I capped this here, obviously foam, but some 2mm foam. I took a 6mm piece and capped the end there so it looks like this part wraps all the way around. This part is going to get glued in, but first I want to round over all the edges a bit, and especially anywhere where layers have come together and there's a bit of a seam between them. I'm going to go use the Rotary Tool and a grinding bit to smooth all of those together, kind of blend them together. I want to blend this edge, or round over this edge a little bit before this gets glued in, because it would be very difficult to do with that piece in there. I'm also going to round over the edges on this a little bit. So, the next thing you'll see is me spending about half an hour in front of the Dremel tool, rounding everything and cleaning it up. And that's it. Alrighty, I went and sanded all the edges, actually recut the teeth a little bit because I kind of screwed those up. With the Dremel, I cleaned up all the edges so everything's kind of rounded over a little bit. I'm going to go over everything with this emery board here, this nail file, and really just kind of tidy things up. Anywhere that there's a little fuzzy bits, I'll try and get rid of those. Then I'll heat seal this probably with a torch. But I have to glue my knob in. Now that these edges are rounded over, I can push this knob through until it's in a good spot like that. And I'm just going to put a little glue in there that way. But make sure it's nice and centered, like that. And then just a little bit of super glue in there. Doesn't need much, because the friction is really going to hold it. But we'll just do a little more. Now I can just go over all the edges with this, clean it up, and we'll call it pretty well done, and then we'll get to sealing and painting later.
To permanently attach the top of this tire iron, I'm going to use super glue. If I use contact cement, I wouldn't be able to slide it on here. Super glue should give me a couple seconds of working time. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. Oh, and it's just like that now. It is. Doesn't let me push it in anymore. It is time to permanently attach the two pieces together. I put contact cement on these guys, and I'm just going to kind of lightly tack the top down. And do the same with that guy. Make sure it is it's sort of straight. There we go. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna just mush this together. Maybe redo that top a little bit. There we go. Conveniently, this whole thing is gonna get reinforced by metal strips that go around the pipe and the blade. And I tried out making some strips out of the 2mm foam, but it's really thin. I want to kind of make sure this attachment is noticeable, so I cut out some pieces of 3mm foam, and just even that little difference I think adds a lot to it. Go. So I'll just keep doing that for all the other strips. I've got my straps all glued down, and now I'm going to just glue on my bolts. And on the other side, I'll have these nuts, which are just bolts that I roughly cut out circles from. And in those are going to go these guys. This is just more of that plastic that I used for the base of the crowbar. This guy here, I just snipped off some of it. And these will stick out like this, and then I will cap them off with something. I don't know, fill them in with, I don't know, hot glue or something. I've got my little pieces of pipe and nuts, and I'm just going to super glue these down into the little holes I made. The holes are to give this a little bit more purchase, so if anything knocks into this, it won't want to peel up as much. It'll have stronger connection there. I also sanded these down so that whatever sealant I put on there will not, won't peel up as much. And I kind of push the super glue into the center, the capillary action pulls it in between the foam nut and the pipe. So it'll get some glue on the inside. Okay, that is not going anywhere. So I lightly touched all of this with a heat gun to seal the foam, and it looks all nice and smooth now. The last thing I'm going to do is cap off the end of these bolts with some quick seal. And I just have an old paintbrush applicator. Just going to brush in some of that. I have my little cup of water, and I'm just going to dip my finger in it and lightly smooth this out. Nice, almost like dome top to it. That looks pretty good though. Cool.
Ta-da! Foam props done. Boom!
Well, we have to paint them.
We do have to paint them. The fabrication is all finished. We're going to seal these off camera. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it. We'll go over that next week for the next live stream. So, and then we'll paint it.
Yeah.
So if you want to catch those, make sure you subscribe or follow our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/punishedprops, and we'll get these things all painted up. And also, if you want to make your own foam props, then you can pick up a copy of Foam Smith 2, number 2, at punishedprops.com. It's my book that I have out about making foam props, utilizing all the techniques you saw in this video.
Yes.
And then we will talk about the sealing and the painting next week. Good job, team. All right, everyone.
Thanks for hanging out.
See y'all on the next live stream.